This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so before discussing this today's Nagios concepts, so let's recollect it what we had it yesterday. Then we go for understanding this like one of the monitoring tool and open source and which they prefer this the monitoring tool that is Nagios. So before that, like what we had it yesterday is like we were understanding about the Tomcat, the complete role, like which we have implemented, which has been customized one, or you can download this directly about our from the Galaxy, Ansible Galaxy, and you can install that one as well as. But this is about our custom one, which has been implemented as per about our requirement. But what are those the main sections we are trying to understand is like main the files, identifying the static files of that tool, and then the templates, identifying the dynamic files which are required, like which the files which are going to keep on getting updated, those files we can make it as a dynamic files and we can create as a templates. And in the templates, which values or which variables are going to change it, the variables we can define it in the var section. So that is like a template where dynamic variables which you can pass it during runtime while running the playbook. And the next section, like a task section, a sequence of the tasks which are required to perform or to manage it about this tool. That's like installation the packages or configuring that users and the groups which are required for that, and configuration files management and restarts management. So all those activities which are required, that we can manage this as a task. And the task, what are the dependencies that we have those other tasks, those tasks which we can trigger that from handlers like notify options. Yeah, they're all the things that we are trying to understand. And like one more important section what we are understanding is the init script defining for the Tomcat, so which is having this all the operations which we are expecting from the services like start, stop, or restart, or like status. These operations we are managing this through that the one init script. But starting, yes, first you need to analyze it about it, like yeah, the start sequence of the steps as one function, and stop or restart or the statuses, so getting the process IDs and process IDs verification, and on the base of the statuses like a triggering or calling about our binary files like start scripts or the stop scripts. Yeah, that is the init scripts we are understanding about it. And then finally we are applying that, that's like including that Tomcat role in our playbook and playbook execution by applying this to the target nodes. Like here we have defined the two nodes. If it is the 10 or 2 or 20 or 100 or 200, doesn't matter of it. The approach is like inventory file defining this is important section. And once the task have been defined, so which inventory group that is required to apply the changes recommended thing. Yeah, so that's the finally Ansible point of view, like a command line based, that is Ansible, playbook based, that is Ansible playbook. So there is a single YAML files execution, and advanced to this the playbook, like which you are trying to understand roles. Yeah, that's the configuration management tool, so which we had it. Now let's move to that. So there's the Nagios monitoring tool. So why we are including here suddenly this monitoring tool is like we are going to manage it to this Nagios monitoring tool, so through the Ansible playbook. So to understand this, the Ansible playbook with about this Nagios, that means Nagios setting up also, which we can do this with the Ansible playbooks. And we are going to talk it in AWS to manage it to install about our Nagios monitoring tool on EC2 instances, and as well as about our web servers and database servers. So there's web servers, we know already how to manage it, so with the playbook. And the databases, yes, we have the sequence of tasks for this MySQL to install it. That's anyway we can understand this. But another tool, so which we should know about it, the monitoring tool. So how do we install about this Nagios, and how do we configure this Nagios like to track that the complete systems information? So that is one prerequisite. So before going to talk about that, Ansible with the AWS resources. So so that's the point. So but what about this Nagios, and what is the purpose of this Nagios, and how this or how this tool is helping that in the infrastructures as a in the infrastructure in the DevOps process? We'll try to understand. Suppose using Ansible, so we can configure about our like a number of host configurations, and in that host like installing about services, the packages, and users management, or the files management, or the the required the dynamic templates management, the tools point of view. So they're all the things which are trying to understand. But so once the tool is configured and tool is up and running, suppose HTTP service is up and running or some SSH service is up and running, but suddenly the one of the client, he is not able to access that application. An application is not able to access nothing, the application which is hosted on that the particular, the hosts are reachable or not, which we need to check it. Or maybe there's a host problem, or is it a networks problem, or is it because of the service failure on that host? That means the HTTP service is down, we cannot access that, or the Tomcat server is down, we cannot access it, or if the SSH service is down, then we cannot connect it to the systems. But how do you identify the problems which you have from this infrastructure? Like configuring this, all the things, that's okay. But as a 24/7, which we're expecting is all the systems which are configured for that application, which we need to keep on monitoring about it. And in case any problems are identified, like a disk space issues, or the memory utilizations, or the CPU utilizations, or the number of processes which are running, or how many number of users are logged in, what is the average load that's we have on the systems. So all this information that is keep on gathering about it or collecting from the systems. And in case some metrics have been reached, metrics in the sense like suppose disk space, you have configured one mount point, which is reached at the 70% in the production environment. If it is reached the 70%, then the client is expecting, or like we are expecting, one alert notification as a warning message, because that is the pre-notification. The so and so project related or the file system related mount point has reached this limitation, this metric. Or if it is an 80% is reached, okay, so we need to have some critical attention immediately, because we should not wait that until to the 100% reached. If it is the 100% is reached on that host, what all the process which are using about that file system are going to get hang, or they are not able to move to that the next process of execution because of there is no disk space, or the CPU utilization is reached at the 100% and there is no sufficient, then that is again the problems. The systems are going to hang, or the memory utilizations which we need to keep on track about it, the performance issues which we need to keep on tracking about it. But how do we collect that all that information which is required to manage that the applications which are running in the production environment with 24/7? So we are not going to keep on sitting that, and we are not going to keep on monitoring about that infrastructure. So we use it some monitoring tools. Yes, one of the monitoring tool which is open source and which is having the more features or the plugins concept. So where we can configure those the clients to this master machine, and we can keep on tracking that all the nodes. Yeah, so that's the tool we are going to talk about. So Nagios is an open source software that can be used for the network and infrastructure monitoring, and it will monitor about our servers or the switches or the applications and services. So there's like what about this infrastructure or application specific resources we have, all the things that we can keep on monitoring about it. And one of the main things that's supporting is Nagios, which we can use it monitor about your entire IT infrastructure. Yes, about the routers or the switches, so which are required, any device if you like to monitor, even printers also you can keep on monitoring if the printer is working or not in the infrastructure. That is also you can register that printer with this Nagios and identify the problems before they occur. Yes, that is the main advantage is, so don't wait until that's reaching about that disk space 100%. So identify that the before the 80% or the 70% in the critical environments before that, and do this or resolve that issue immediately. And know immediately when the problems rise. Yes, whenever the problems are raised, particular service is down. So how do we know that, or how do we get that this about the services or the particular the app is down or what? Yeah, so there's a knowing about it immediately the problems which are raised in the infrastructure. And we can share this availability data with the stakeholders, like about our clients. We can share it about our infrastructure, production infrastructure, how it is behaving, and what are the current statistics that we have. So we can keep on updating this to this the clients about that the infrastructure information, and detecting that's the security related breaches which are happened thus in the infrastructure, and plan and budget for upgrades. Yes, upgrades. If you try to understand this, one of the important point is like whenever we have this updating that some change to this environment, production environment especially, suppose already this version 1.2 is available and you need to upgrade that to 1.3 version, or we have the some Tomcat server which is on the port 8080 and customer is asking us, okay, so let's go for doing the some customizations on this, so the port 8090 or a Tomcat which is on that 80 version, let's upgrade to that 9.0. So if you have this kind of either infrastructure related or application related changes during that particular time, that means whenever you are applying that change on the production system, so we need to have the some shutdown time. This means like which we can say this production cutovers will call that. So production cutover which they plan it so what is the time that is required to update that change to the production environment, and during that time, so they will intimate to the clients, boss, this is the update we are going to do that. So during that time, so application some maintenance activities which we have this where you cannot access some services. But during that time, so okay, you are doing the changes on the Tomcat, so some Tomcat server is required to restart it. But the Tomcat server during restarting that particular time, so suppose let's they planned it like early morning 3 a.m. to the 4 a.m. and during that time, about our monitoring tools on that particular service, they should not monitor it. So 3 to 4, that is the known activity. So we are going to shut down this like as per upgrade to perform it. That is known activity. During that time, about our monitoring tools, I should check it that okay, the Tomcat server is failed. Then it should not send the email notification during that time because that is a known activity. So if you have this any maintenance activity, the particular service you are going to shut down that which is known activity during that time. So we need to instruct to the support or monitoring tool, don't monitor or don't to track that statistics of this service on that host or particular host. So how to manage it about your maintenance times? Yeah, so we can define this in the Nagios, that is the shutdown times, which host or which service. So during that time, Nagios is not going to check it. And once the time is over, then again it is going to start this keep on tracking about it, the particular the service which is defined, the host which is defined. Yeah, so there are main activities that we can have it from the monitoring tool. And as a DevOps engineer, so one of those the DevOps activity which I have is continuous monitoring. So we need to keep on monitoring about our infrastructures and any new nodes are configured or any new services which are configured. And we need to register that node or we need to make sure that the service is configured within the monitoring tool. But how do we manage it? So we should know that. So the managing about this one of the monitoring tool as well as. So that's tool. Let's start about that working on the Nagios. So we are going to configure this, the fresh one, there's Nagios, and how do we install it? And how to configure that. And here one more point what we can understand is the Nagios point of view. Here also we are expecting this master and slave agents like the Nagios controller machine. And what are the nodes we have this in the infrastructure, all the nodes have to be registered with this Nagios. Like what are the systems that we have this in the infrastructure, all these systems so all these systems are required to register with the Nagios master one. So we take this the one some controller servers or central server. And this server keep on communicating with us all these nodes, like these are all like about our suppose app server one, this is some okay another app server 2, and this is some web server, and this is like something database. Yeah, so if you just observe that, so these are all the host which we have used or virtual machines which are configured like for about our application requirement point of view. But all these systems and within the systems what all the services are running, like app server services or the web server services or the database services are required to register with the central server. So the central server contains one process. This process keep on communicating with all these information, and any update or any the service is failed or the host is not reachable, some network outage which you have on the systems, immediately Nagios is getting this information, and it is going to send that about our administrators who are like managing about this Nagios, or the email IDs which are configured in this Nagios control server, a central server. And these systems from configuration management point of view, we can configure about our yesterday we are trying to understand like Ansible you can use it. So to manage it about all these nodes with configurations and all these points of view, like installing the packages or the services which are required for that application, that's we can manage it from Ansible controller server. So this Ansible controller server from Git, you can upload about your playbooks. Yeah, so upload about the playbooks which are implemented into the Git repo and download it and apply the Ansible commands, like Ansible playbook commands on the base of the roles which we have, which is going to take care of this managing about it configuration point of view, all these systems. But once all these packages or services are installed on the systems, how do you keep on tracking about it? That is the central server which is going to support it. So here, Nagios, one central system which we need to configure, and remaining all the systems are the clients to the Nagios. They're all the clients. Nagios clients we call that. But in our infrastructure, all these clients are that's about our application related virtual machines, application related the services, whatever you are running that, all these services related hosts, these are all. Yeah, so now what do we do this? What we're going to learn it is we take this one machine and we try to install about this, the completely setting up this Nagios central system. Then already we have done this Ansible, some nodes which are available. Ansible client is available. Or Ansible controller also you can do that, monitoring as a node. And Ansible one node we have configured as a web server. That server, how do we register as a client to this central server? And once this server or client is registered with this master machine, and which services are required to monitor on this host, those services also how do we configure it with the Nagios central system, which we'll try to understand it those points. Yeah, now let's jump into that, the two activities we are going to do that. So one is how do we configure this complete central system, the Nagios. Then once the central system is ready, the next we take this one client machine which is required to keep on monitoring about the system. This system, how do we register with the Nagios? So one system, if you know that, so this system is the same thing, this system is same thing, this system is same thing, but service names are service types are the different. Here it is HTTP service, here it is Tomcat service, here it is MySQL service. But first of all, how do we register the clients with the Nagios central machine? And once the host is registered with the central system, how do we define that the services which are running on this host with this master machine? Yeah, so there are points, some points which are required to know about it, but how do we manage it or how do you know this all these points? That is the next concept which we have. Okay, let's look at about it. The Nagios central system configuration. And I mean, so this system, like it could be like we are going to take it this as a Ubuntu system, and this system we are going to take it as a CentOS. Or you can take it this one also CentOS, but so why we are going to take it this Ubuntu systems, I'll come back to that. So Nagios central system, we are going to take it one vagrant machine, so that is from Ubuntu, and the web server already we are already working with us the Nagios, that CentOS systems we use it as to configure with the client. Or this one could be Ubuntu also, how to configure it as a client, Ubuntu or CentOS. So these systems, that should be any type of that, but how do we register these clients with the master one? Let's talk about it. The first configure in the master one. Yeah, so why we are going to take this the Ubuntu instead of that as a master to configure the CentOS? You can use it any one of that. There is no restriction on that. But the point what you have is, if you'd like to configure this Nagios, what is the prerequisite that we have is we need to complete LAMP stack on the Nagios central system. So what is the prerequisite that we have is yeah, Nagios to configure this, the complete LAMP stack we need to install it. The LAMP stack is like as Linux, Apache, and then MySQL, and with PHP. So if you prefer the CentOS system, then the CentOS Linux systems, and then Apache bundles you need to install separately. Then MySQL you need to, that's database you need to install separately, and some Apache to MySQL to integrate it. Some those Apache modules we need to install it, and PHP to access this MySQL. So there's some like other modules we need to install. Then users and password setting, a lot of processes there. So which is going to take this one class itself to set up this complete all this stack. So if it's the like Ubuntu or Linux CentOS, if it's the CentOS especially, we don't have that the grouped package, or like which we can say the orchestrated package, where I can install all three together in single package. So I need to go for that individual one, first Apache, then MySQL, then PHP. But if I prefer that, if it is CentOS, this is a CentOS, you need to go for one by one installation. But if for the Ubuntu, what is the advantage we have is we have this one package utility that is a task cell. If I install that, then that is providing about it that is orchestrated all these packages as a single bundle. That means I can access all these packages in a single bundle. With a single click, I can install my Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So instead of spending the time on these Apache, MySQL, PHP installations, we are going to use it, that's package, as a point, as a requirement point of view. So now let's go for using about the LAMP stacks. So using so using about this task cell options. So this is the task cell we are going to use it that. So that is the ready-made package which is available on Ubuntu system. So what it does, the package is apt-get install task cell. So if you just go to this okay, let me take this one vagrant file. That vagrant file, what we are going to define is the Ubuntu system, only for central system point of view, or Nagios central system point of view. Let me create one directory. Yeah, so this is the file, but let me just define that. Yes, that's box. What is the box it contains is Ubuntu box itself. Okay, let me start about this box. So which I can, which we use it about this, and what is the IP address which we configure is, let me define 33 something 30, and let me define this the memory as 1 GB. So in the organization, so Nagios central system, the completely that is a remote system. IP address and Ubuntu Xenial. Yeah, so these are like things which we have. Now let me go back to that launching about the system. Yeah, so that takes some time anyway to launch it. So meanwhile let's discuss about that, what we are going to do, some next steps, like once the system is ready. So we are going to use a task cell is the package, and we are installing that package with apt-get option. And this task cell is helping that, like that's lamp stack, whatever it is required. Yeah, as a single bundle, you can go for that. So that means, so once the task cell is ready, then you can just check it the task cell to start in GUI, and then we can go for the task cell install lamp server. So they have given as one bundle how we are installing the HTTP package with the M or apt-get. Like here task cell is helping about it to install the complete the MySQL with Apache and PHP modules. With a single click we can do that, and then set the password for the MySQL database. That's all. Yeah, once this the lamp stack has been configured, because why it is have the dependency, all these things is whatever the monitoring data which is collecting, that's complete data it is storing in MySQL database. And we need to have the dashboard to see this about our services statuses or the host statuses. So we need to have this one server which is up and running, where we can use it that URL to access the dashboard. That is the Apache server. And the PHP is that, so whatever the application we are trying to access, and the Nagios, like I mean the related application, that application is PHP which has been implemented. Yeah, so that is the purpose. There are the three things that we need to have on that system. Yeah, that is first thing, LAMP server. And then we can use it about that apt-get to install the Nagios. Yes, Nagios is available as a package utility, like which you can go for that apt-get install Nagios 3. So Nagios, if you use it, that is the 2 version. Nagios 3 is the latest version. So you can just browse it, the Nagios documentation if you needed the version. So like Nagios 3 is the latest version which is available, and you can confirm that. And whenever it is during installation time, it is prompting for the some configuration. And what is the configuration information that is required to define it? Like postfix configuration, it is going to prompt it. So what is the postfix configuration? This is for mail configuration. That means if you would like to send the email notifications, and if you install this the postfix server, then that postfix configuration we are defining this in this Nagios server. This is for the mail configuration purpose. So it is going to prompt for that. Do you want to use it internet site, or do you want yeah, so internet site we need to define it. Then some domain names we need to define. Then you are going to access the dashboard of the Nagios. That's a dashboard. To access it, we need to define the some password as well as. Yeah, there are some configurations which we are expecting this during the Nagios installation. And if you define these properties, then everything is good. The Nagios is ready. And then we can start about this Nagios as a service Nagios 3, start or stop or restart. You can do that, or you can check the status of the service, and you can verify that the configuration file. So what is the main configuration file of the Nagios, where it is located is, that is in etc nagios.cfg. Yeah, so we'll come back all these points once this installation is done. And once this service has been started, you can access about this Nagios console with about our IP address and Apache support and context name as Nagios 3, and give that the username and password. So during the configuration, it is prompting for the password. The password you can specify here. Then you can log into Nagios console. Yeah, so those are steps. So which we are going to do this next one. So let me log into the system. Yeah, so this is Ubuntu system. And Ubuntu Xenial we are using, that is 16.04. Yeah, the first let me update this system first. Apt-get update. Yeah, so update is done. Now let's install it. The task cell. You can browse it in the Google how I can install the Slam stack on Ubuntu. Then this is the package which is available. Just install it and go for the LAMP server to install it. All whenever you browse it on the base of the requirement, which you will be knowing that, and then use that task cell. Yeah, so that is the advantage of this task cells. You can see that I mean, you can go for that in the Ubuntu genome or Ubuntu, so many it has been given, and DNS servers you can configure, and this is the LAMP server stack it has been given. You can just select it and you can go for installing this, or you can install the mail servers if it is required. Yeah, the PostgreSQL database we can install it, and the Tomcat server itself you can install it. Yes, you don't. I mean, if you'd like to install as a service, then you can use it, the task cell, and run that this Tomcat Java server. Yeah, so there are like some services which they have given as a ready-made, which you can just browse it and you can go for that selecting and installation. That is a GUI based, or if you'd like to go for to install it in the command line based task cell and give that which package that you want to install it. Yeah, so it is prompting for this MySQL root user password. So just define that any one of the password and confirm the password. Yeah, so that's done. Yeah, that is the first package which is required as a prerequisite for the Nagios. Now let's go for installing about our Nagios packages. Apt-get. This is through that about our package manager utility and Nagios 3. But before exporting this task cell and this Nagios, do that update. Apt-get update that is recommended. Otherwise, in the task cell, after the 20%, it is going to get failure. So make sure the first update the cache or repositories list, and then go for that installing these packages. Yeah, so during installation, it is asking some configuration. Like one of the configuration is postfix configuration. Please select the mail server configuration type that best meets about our needs. Yeah, so there are the options which are available. So in the next slide, it is going to display that options, but here it has been given the just a description of those options. So if you don't need that any configuration, just no configuration, you can select it. Should be chosen to leave the current configuration unchanged. And internet site. So if you select this internet site, what it is doing is mail is sent and received directly using SMTP server. Yes, what are the SMTP server which are going to configure that? Using that SMTP server, it is going to use it to send the emails. And if you define that internet with a smart host, so mail is received directly using SMTP or by running utilities such as fetch mail. Outgoing mail is sent using a smart host. So incoming and outgoing, both the SMTP, but here it is the different services it is going to use it. And another option what we can select it is satellite system. All mail is sent to another machine called a smart host for delivery purpose. That means it is going to send this to this other host to deliver the mails. And the local only, that means the only delivered mail is the mail for local users. There is no network. So recommended option is internet site is recommended. Yeah, so this is a configuration. So options. So here it is showing this which type of mail configuration that we're expecting. No configuration or internet site, internet with smart host or satellite system or local only. So select about that internet site and go for that. Then what are the internet site which are selected? About our the domain name of the mail server we need to define here. Like this is a system mail name. So suppose if you're working for so XYZ company, @ of xyz.com which will be having. So that domain name servers which we need to define here. But here we are not having anything, so just we are skipping about this as with the default value. And finally, to access this, the dashboard, the administration password. So that's like a Nagios admin password we can define. So to access about our dashboard, let me give this. I'm just giving this welcome, or we can customize it any. Yeah, so there are all the configuration that's required. Like internet site is the best option. So whenever you are defining the Nagios, so which is going to helpful. The most of the system generated emails, these are all like which is recommended is SMTP server. So the select that the second option, and then define the domain which we have the mail server domains, and then finally like define that the dashboard's password. And here whenever it is installing, if you just observe that, so it is installing some plugins here, the Nagios plugins into that etc folder. Yes, these plugins are going to play important role. Or whatever those plugins and how these plugins are helping, which will come back. Yeah, so that's done. So setting up that. Now you can check it. That's the service name as Nagios 3. Yeah, so the Nagios server is up and running. Nagios server is up and running. So there is, or you can go for the starting and stopping as we are using that in the CentOS system CTL, then operation, then service name. And here the service and the service name and operation type. So this is like the difference which we have this on the basis of the type of distribution whenever you are working. And yes, we are good. And one more point what do we have is, so if you like to know about this, where exactly the Nagios configuration is located is, so this is a directory and we are going to work with this, and the next class entirely which we are going to discuss on this Nagios configuration itself. And this is the location, so where you can see this list of all the configuration files. So etc Nagios 3 on the base of the version which you have installed. And here one of the important configuration file, as we were trying to understand this Ansible configuration file is etc Ansible and ansible.cfg. Like that, the here etc Nagios home directory and then nagios.cfg. But what do we have this in this cfg? If you just try to browse it about some information, yeah, some configuration files, configuration information. If you just observe that the log file, what are the events which are generating that? That means all the activities of the Nagios, it is storing in this location, that is The log file of this Nagios is var log nagios 3. So in this location, and the log file name is nagios.log file. And it is, we are running about some commands to check if this disk spaces or services reachable or not. But all these commands, where it is managing the Cs, I'll come back. All these, what about all these commands and how do you implement these commands to check it about your SH service or like HTTP services, which will come back. And this is the file which is contains about that all the commands related Nagios. So the commands definitions and the plugins locations where the plugins are located, the plugins configuration, and the main important configuration file and configuration directory. Yes, so the configuration directory is so etc nagios 3 conf.d. That means whatever the host we are defining or what are the services about the clients we are defining, all those the host files or the service files we will define in this directory. So this is one of the important directory. We are going to use it. We are going to come back to that. And most of those the commented, so objects and some more information. If you observe that the status files it is managing here and which user account it is using, so the Nagios user, and what is the update interval which is going to keep on checking that is the 10 seconds. So status file update interval, so this it is going to keep on verifying that every 10 seconds. And which group of those the users can be managed about this Nagios, so default Nagios user and a Nagios group. And we are coming back to this, we are going to face some exceptions. To resolve that, we need to set up some properties which will come back. We need to enable these properties. Yeah, so these are all some points. So like if you'd like to review, that's the process ID files where it is managing, where the temporary file is managing. They're all the default properties. We don't get this that much, but the log files are going to play important role, and external commands enabling disabling some points, and some commands files configuration directories. So there are some properties which you can check it here in this nagios.cfg, but we'll come back some properties to customize it in this location. And the next point what do we have is, yes, we have install about it, and the Nagios server is up and running, and where the Nagios file is located, that's just we are understanding, and the complete the Nagios file location, etc Nagios 3 is the location, but we'll come back to that's the configuration point of it to understand more. And now let's ask about this Nagios dashboard. So if we just browse it about this about our Nagios dashboard, so what is the IP address that we are using? So 33, so 30, and the port is 8080 only, and Nagios 3. Yeah, so here it is prompting for that username and password. The username is the default is Nagios admin, and the password which we have set up this, that is a welcome. Yeah, so this is a Nagios dashboard, so which is helping like to track it about complete host and services information. And in this home page, so you can see there's some documentation, or you can browse it about that, the Nagios libraries and the Nagios support. You can refer that, and labs, some development blogs which you can find it here. And the documentations, the quick start installation guides, it has been given here. You can just browse it on the CentOS or the Red Hat. So on which systems, how do we set up this, all these steps it has been given. And how do we configure this, the post installation, some configurations on the like Linux or Unix machines if you browse it. So what are the post installation configuration that we can do, that you can check it about it. But we'll come back with like what is this NRP, how do we configure it. So there's a client and the master configurations. So this is about our host which we need to install some services NRP, and this is the main service which is helping to have a communication between the master and services. That means whatever we are trying to understand between the central server to the all these clients to establish on these machines, on these client machines, we need to install some service. What is that service? We call this is NRP. This NRP is collecting that or running this all the commands in our local system, which collects this information and which shares that information to the Nagios. But how do you configure this? Yes, which will come back. And if you need that, the different systems, how to configure it, Windows based systems or the Linux based systems, yes, this is the documentation where they have given this, which you can check it. And external commands we have this, and the plugin development, some guides we have, but plugins which will come back, where the plugins are located, how do we use it, these plugins. So this is a documentation, so which you can browse it that. So the complete any reference is required, there is Nagios documentation. Yeah, so the before talking about it, so like let's observe there's some points here. So before going to talk about the plugins, so let's observe some points here. In the general sections homepage, this is a homepage, and you can see this documentation here also, like which is redirecting to that the homepage of the Nagios. So the manuals you can browse it on the base of the versions which are available, 3x or the 4x versions. The manuals you can access it and you can look at that. Yeah, this is a general section. And now this section, if you just observe that, which we can keep on tracking about our current infrastructure, host or services, or the networks which we have. But how do we see this and why we have this? There are different options. Let's observe this one by one. And in the tactical overview, if you just browse it, this is going to give the complete infrastructure overview. Like here, you can see this. Do you have this any network outages in the infrastructure or not? If you have this any outages, so there's a number of systems are having this outages, it is going to track it, or you can just browse it. Here you can see that the severity of that block and which host that is blocked, what are the current state and state duration, and which are all the hosts are affected with this network block, and which are all the services are affected with these network blocks. So there's complete information of that. And thus the network outages, entire infrastructure, that means what are the hosts which are registered with this Nagios. It is as a overview, it is going to give here a list of all the hosts which are configured in this Nagios. But here, if you just observe that, so like one system which is showing as up, that means we didn't register any client, but it is showing us one of the system which is registered with that about our Nagios. But what is that system? If you just observe that, the Nagios master itself is registered as a one client to about our by default to about our Nagios master, and that system is up and running. That is showing that, and if you just click on this, a switch system is that is the local host system. But we'll come back to this to understand all this some points here. Like if you go back to this, so you can see this list of all the host statuses, how many are down, or do you have this any servers which are unreachable or up and running, or do you have this any pending which are initializing. Yeah, so these are the host information which we can check it here, and as well as services information also we can see. But what is the host and what is the service? If you just observe that, the host is like which was saying this one virtual machine, and in that virtual machine we are having the HTTP service or SSH service or process verifications, or like a load average verifications, or the CPU utilizations verification, or disk utilization verification. These are all comes under as services. So if this one host now it is registered, but how many services it is showing this? If you just observe here, 6 services are showing as okay. That means on this system 6 services are registered with this Nagios master to keep on track that the some services. But what are those services? If you just click on that, you can see the some services information, but I will talk it. You can access all the services from here as well as services, or you can access this host from here as well as. We'll come back to that in that section, but this is a overview which is giving that. So in the infrastructure, so do you have any network outages, or how many systems are reachable or unreachable, or how many services are in the critical situation, critical statuses, or the warning statuses, or unknown statuses, or how many are okay? Do we have any pending statuses? And the configurations, high-level configurations, the notifications have been enabled or not, and flap detections, like the flapping mechanisms has been enabled or not on all the host, and event handlers on the services have been enabled or not. That means to trigger that events, and active checks. So there's a check, I mean the particular service active or passive checks. Sometimes we do that making passive of the service. That means whenever we have this the maintenance activities, the service which will be in pause mode, like where like active and passive are like the services, and active checks required on the services or not, or the passive checks required on the services or not. That means in case the service is not reachable, but if the service is registered with that, then if it is enabled the passive, so which is going to helpful during the maintenance times as a passive verifications. Yeah, so all those the monitoring features which have been enabled or not from the Nagios. So there's overview of that Nagios configuration, which we can see this, which are all enabled or which are all disabled. But how do we enable or how do we disable these options, which will come back in the configuration file sections. Yeah, these are the overview or overall. That's the complete infrastructure information which is showing here. And if we just browse it about the map view, also we have this next to this tactical. So map is available in this map, like so which is showing this Nagios process. But what is the host that is showing here? One host, that is the local host. And if we just mouse over on that, so it is giving that the some information like so which host, I mean, so we need to mouse over on this. I cannot take it this the mouse to that, and you can see this what is the name of the host or alias names and address of that, and pinging, so it is okay or not ping status, and what is the duration it was taken that, and the last status check, and the last state which has been changed. And finally, on this host services also, how many services are running? 6 services are okay. That means this is a map overview. If you just mouse over on that, so you can see this the complete information, or you can, if you click on that section, which is redirecting to the services or host section. There is a map view, like which you can hover that, or you can just click on this that section, which is redirecting to here, or directly you can come back to the host section. So if you just click on this hosts, like one host which is showing here, so that is the local host. That means this system itself has been registered as to monitoring it. But if you need it, you can use it. If you don't need it, you can remove it. But the master also, so some services wise which we can keep it that any services on the master machine are running or not, so which we need to define it. That's purpose is this host is also recommended to use it. Yeah, so this is the host information. And so which type of distribution, if you just observe that it is showing is the Ubuntu Linux. So you can just click on that, which is going to give us this the Ubuntu Linux server information, but this is about our system information. So this information you can directly access from here also. So there's if you just click on this, the local host also, which is redirecting here, and what is the current status which you have, and status information, that is pinging okay, ping status okay, and no packets are lost whenever it is verifying with this host. That means normally how to verify this, the host is reachable is nothing but we use the ping command, and all those the 100% packets have been the sent it and received it, so which will be having always 100%. That means no loss. So here it is showing that do you have those any packets which are lost while communicating with this host. That's information. And the performance data, so which we have the load average, so the information, and so which you have the last check time, check type, this is active, and the latency, what is the time it has been taken, that the duration and the latencies, and when it is going to check it the next time, the schedule active check, and the last state change. That means so when it was detected this host is up is, so this was identified, so at this time, suppose if the system is down, or if the system is restarted, and after restarting that the system state has been changed, so it is just helping about it when the last state has been changed. And do we have this any notification from the system, so which are triggered, and flap detections, so no flaps have been identified, and scheduled downtime have been defined on this host or not, but where we can define or how to define it will come back. This just like in the information, and the last update when it was happened on the system. So there are the complete information which we can use it. And here there are all the checks on this host which are enabled, and if you don't need that, suppose so during that the shutting time you need to disable the notifications. but the notification system has been enabled. If the notification system has been enabled is nothing but whenever you shut down that, the manually also, which is known activity also, which is going to trigger that notification. But you need to disable the notification. How I can disable the notification? So here you can perform that, disabling the notifications of all these services on the host, and you can see the somewhere, yeah, the disable notification for this host. And what about this option is enabling or disabling the notifications for all the services on that host. So all the services, if you would like to disable or enable the notifications, or this particular the system related the notification, enable or disabling that, and active checks required or not. And yes, so whatever these options which are showing, active checks or the passive checks, so all these enabling disabling options which we can do that here. And one more point here also, you can see that you can define the scheduled downtimes for this host also. That means if you have this like a particular Sunday, particular time, you have the restart activity. So before restarting this, and once it is confirmed thus in the production environment, once we got the confirmation, then we need to define that's on the monitoring tool about that downtime of the host or downtime of the service. So but where we can define that downtime of the host or downtime of the service within the monitoring tool. So while defining this, what is that advantage is, it is not going to check it that service is up and running or that host is up and running in that particular duration. So we can define that downtimes of this host or downtimes of the services. Yes, there are all the host related commands which are available on the base of the requirement which we can use it. But how do you access this section is, if you go to the host and you can just click on that host section, so which is redirecting to this, you can so use it, which options. But these commands I will if you just observe that, suppose I don't need that notifications for this host, so if I disable this, yes, it is prompting for that. On which host does do you want to disable that? Yes, what is the host name we have is localhost. We are good. And disable the notifications for the child host too as well as. That means if it is having this any child host reference on that host also, that do you want to disable, you can enable it. And that means these are group wise. And if you commit this, but we are going to get one exception. But don't worry, how do we, I mean, whatever this command, and we'll come back to this once these two sections understood. We are going to configure some more configurations to overcome these problems, which will come back. And yeah, that means the first, whenever you are working that, so it is not accepting that to take that the command. So any command, if you're trying to run it, so enable the notification on the services on this host, and if you commit, which is not taking this command. So we need to enable some properties in the configuration file, which will come back to understand. But this is the host information on this host. And here we have this one more icon also here. If you just observe that, you can just access that list of all the services which are running on that host. So you can go to that particular host. In that host, what all the services are running, I can directly view from here itself. So what are the services that have been defined? If you just observe this, the default, the local host, which is reached as to this monitoring point of view, it is keep on checking that the service current load on this host. The current load status is okay, load is okay, and when it was lastly checked, and what was the duration that was done, and how many attempts it was done. In the first attempt itself it was found, but total it is going to attempt the 4 times, and within the 4 times, if the load average is that having the high, I mean the high metrics, then it is going to give that the status as warning or criticals. So this is how many attempts it has been done to make it this status is okay. And what the status information that is showing is, yes, okay, the load average on the system, which is having this last 1 minute, there is no load, last 5 minutes, there is no load, and the last 15 minutes, there is no load on that, only just some 0.03 which we have. Yeah, that's each service. So this is a current load, current users. But how do you configure this service? Yes, which will come back, because this is the default, the Nagios master machine is configured with all these defaults, as this is a default host and the default services. But about our host and that host, about our services, how do we register that? Now tomorrow you need to add it one node. Even if you're talking about this Ansible, all these clients region also we can do that through Ansible itself. That's I'll show this whenever we are going to work with that AWS. But first we try to learn it about this manually, how to do that. But the same manually, whatever it is defined, so how do you perform this through the Ansible, enabling these notifications or disabling these notifications about the host. That is also we can manage it through Ansible itself. You don't need to touch it about the Nagios here. But before this, we are just trying to understand this point, like how the Nagios is helping, or what are the main sections we have, or how do we configure so these master and the client registrations. So that's we are trying to understand that. Yeah, the current users, yes, so it was last check on duration, and how many users it is found, it is one user. So currently logged in, yes, we have logged in only one user account, but we can give that, suppose, so in the infrastructures which we have, like suppose if the database system DB administrators will log into the system, and if the network administrators, if they would like to check it, there's some networks, they will log into that. The system administrators will log into that. Some monitoring users, they will monitoring like who are managing about the tools, that's teams, they will log into that. The multiple users, they are going to log in at the same time to the systems. But how many users are logged in? The user sometimes, if the users are 5 members are logged in, that means we need to get some notification, so the 5 members are logged in. That is the minimum limitation has been exceeded. And if the 10 members are logged in at the same time, yes, we need to get some notifications, like critical notifications. So that's purpose we can define that these current users. But current users now it is okay, but we can define that that's how many members it can show this as a warning message, and the how many members it can show this as a critical message. In some of the configuration files we can define it. So all these metrics which are required to keep on tracking about our systems, which will come back. So this is like showing this as okay with one user. And a disk space, yes, disk space on this host now it is showing okay. Sorry, disk status okay, but how do we define it, all these disk spaces? And HTTP service, yes, Apache service is running. The Apache HTTP service is okay, and which is showing the status code as 200 is okay for that. And how many attempts it is identified within one attempt. If there's a, suppose HTTP service, you shut down it, the first attempt, second attempt. So we can define the intervals also. We have some configuration files, we'll come back. So second attempt, third attempt, 4 attempts. Within the 4 attempts, this service is not reachable, then it is going to give that the critical message over here. Like SSH service, total process. How many processes are running on this host? 124 processes are running on this host. Yeah, the complete the services we can register. We can see that if you like to see the services, you can directly go to the services section, or particular host based services. If you'd like to see this, go to the host section and identify about your host and select about the services anyway, which is redirecting to the services section. This is the services status. And here also you can see this overall some information and host status totals and services status totals. This is the overall like up systems which are having this one. Do you have this any down systems or unreachable systems or pending system, like whatever we have seen in the tactical overview? This is giving that the overview of all the hosts and services. Do you have this any problems with the host or not in the infrastructure? And all types of the host are one. All types are nothing but here it is up or down or unreachable or pending. Total how many we have, one, but out of that we don't have any problems on that. Like the services wise also you can see the status here, and how many services are okay, or warning statuses, or unknown statuses, or critical, or pending, and do you have this any problems with any one of the services or not, and the total how many services we have this. So the host status totals and service status totals also you can see here, either from the host section, so in the host section also you can see, or in the services section also you can see that. Yeah, so that's about host section and services section. And the next section what we have this is hosts itself, we can group it. Like suppose if I'm having the like HTTP servers which are running 4 servers, all these 4 servers as a HTTP services we can group it. Our MySQL is running on the 4 systems, all those 4 systems as a database systems we can group it. So where we can see the the host on the base of the groups is, so this is the section. So this is the individual host. there is no group concept here. But all these hosts, we can add it into the group also. Suppose here, if you observe that all servers, so all the servers into this one group, and all the HTTP servers, what are the hosts which contain the HTTP servers are into this group. This is one group. Like, I mean, this is the group as a HTTP servers. What are the hosts are having this? But the HTTP servers are running on only one host. What other host is? Local host currently. If you have those 10 systems, out of the 10 systems, 4 systems are HTTP, and all the 4 systems which will be listed here. The systems which are having HTTP servers, the systems which are having SSH servers, the systems which are belong to Ubuntu Linux systems. And irrespective of that, like a type or a functionality or the service based, then you can see this all the servers. Yeah, while adding the host itself, we can add it which system is belong to that which group. That's also we can define it in the configuration files. So host group or some kind of the directives which we have. So using those directives, we can add it. This host is belong to that which group. But this is like a dynamically identifying that on the basis of that services which are running on those hosts. Yeah, the host groups are the service groups, the service based, but there are no service groups which are defined by default. Host groups, yes, there are the host, and in that host, like on the basis of the services which are defined here. Yeah, that's about host groups, service groups. You can see that as a summary point of view, the grid representation point of view. And in the current status section, we have this one more option, that is problems. So what are these problems? If you just observe that, so if you see this, any host or any services which are showing this in the problems, then you can see that. So if you just click on that, those sections, which is redirecting to this section. Yeah, so the problems with the services status, we don't have those any services which are having the problems. All are good, all are okay. That's why it is not listing that any service. In case the service is having the warning or service is having the critical, then on which host that service is having the critical, what is the service name, what is the status of that service, and when it was lastly verified, what was the duration that was taken that, and attempt how many times it was attempted, and what is the final status information. We'll see this. We'll generate some the errors to trigger some warning messages, and we'll see that's how these warning messages are showing this in the problem section. Unlike that host information, you can see that there's a host which host and what is the status of that host, when it was lastly checked, what was the duration that was verified lastly, and what is the status information currently. And finally, you can see this network outages also, what is the severity of these network outages, and on which host, what is the status, and the nodes information, and the state duration. So when it was verified, hosts are affected, services are affected. So that's the network outages also, which we can verify this from this. There are the problems, especially so in this host section or services section. If you see the some red marks or some critical or warning statuses, then you can go to here also you can check it, or you can go to the specific the problem section and you can see that specific problems which we have this on the systems. Yeah, this is about current infrastructure, so which you can keep on tracking that. But in this current, so what is the host that we have is default about our local host which is added. Now what do we do this is we go configuring about our client to registering with this master machine. Yeah, so before understanding about this, the clients and all these points, clients how to register it, we should know that one of the concept that is here some problems we need to resolve it. What are those problems we are trying to understand is, if you like to trigger that any command here, there are the commands. So you are giving that the command to the Nagios system to enable or disable or to define the schedule times or the shutdown times which we have, or also to stop that. So there's the passive checks required or not. So there's rescheduling about this next check. So we can define that when it can recheck it that. So there's a reschedules. So any command you are giving this here is nothing but all these commands are going to get failure. So if you just observe that, stopping that, the notifications or the scheduled downtime. Yes, I mean I'll explain the scheduled downtime later. Yeah, so if you just take it as yes, disabling the notification, but if you are committing that, what it is saying is, sorry, but Nagios is currently not checking for external commands. Your command will not be committed. So it is not accepting that to update about our commit or the request which are submitting to the configuration files. So by default, it is not accepting to receive the external commands from the dashboard. So we need to enable this one property. So what is the property that we need to enable? Let's browse it, that the configuration file. Yeah, so in the CTC Nagios, so if you open this nagios.cfg file, and you can search for like external is the keyword. Yeah, so here by default, if you just observe the check external commands, by default the 0 has been set up, that 0 is nothing but disable that. So this option allows you to specify whether or not Nagios should check for external commands. So it is disabled, so we need to enable this property. So set as 1 and save it. And if once these configuration files have been changed, we need to restart the service. Yes, let's go for restarting the service. That is service Nagios 3 stop, and then start the service. Yes, so once that is started, and if you come back to here, and if you refresh this, and again if you go to the host, still the problem is not resolved, but we'll observe this. What is the exception? Next one. Yeah, so if you're trying to submit this request on this host, yeah, so it is still not accepting. What it is saying is, before it was external command is not taking that, but now this time is a different exception. So the external command file may be missing, Nagios may not be running, or Nagios may not be checking external commands. External commands, that was not the problem. So what is the message or error message which is saying it could not start command file? That means in the var lib nagios 3, whatever this file is located, the nagios.cmd, this command file we are not able to run it. So that means this is the permission issue. So could not start command, whenever you see this we can understand it. This is the permission issue from the Nagios point of view. So just to, and so we need to enable some permissions for this on this folder. But how do we set up all these permissions? If you just browse it here, so I mean not ch mode options, like we have some commands to define it. What are those commands? If you just observe that, yeah, so we're doing the configuration files and checking that Nagios user group and all this information is available. Log file location in the nagios.cfg. Log file locations, status update, file locations of the commands, and plugins locations where those are located. Will come back plugins. Yeah, so this exception, Nagios is currently not checking for external commands. If you see that, go to nagios.cfg file and check the external commands equal to 1 and restart the service and check it. But now the exception, what is coming, this is second exception. Could not start command file nagios.cmg file, and we need to set the permissions. So how do we set the permissions is, first to stop the service, Nagios service. Then we have some dpkg package, like this Debian based package utility. So this utility we are using the overriding the permissions with that update command and add Nagios user. So this for this command, like we are adding this the user and a www data. So these two, I mean this user adding to this directory with the permissions, that is a 710 about this location. Yeah, so if you just refer about it, whenever you got this exception, if you search it about the Google or the Nagios documentation, so these two commands we need to run it to resolve this issue. Yeah, so first let me stop the service, then let me run these commands. There are the direct commands. We don't have this update. So just take it this commands and copy it, or you can just browse it with this exception in the Google also, which is redirecting with these solutions. Yeah, so once these two commands are run, now let's restart about our service. Yes, Nagios is up and running. Now let's refresh this about our page. And let's go back to the hosts. And if you try to give us the command, now about our command request was successfully submitted to the Nagios for processing. It may take a while before the command is actually processed. Yes, it is going to take it some time to get the refresh. So then once that's done, so the notifications, and we are expecting on this host, the notifications are disabled. So let's try to refresh this. Yeah, so now on this host, the notifications have been disabled. And if you need it, so the notifications once again, so you can enable the notifications and you can commit the data. And after some time, so the once the change is applied, and if you refresh it, you will be having enabled status. Yeah, so this way you can control it. That is like a shutdown times also, which will observe this. That is a important activity, and like mostly this will be enabled. So if you need it, some maintenance activities point of view, sometimes where we are not expecting the some notifications on the particular services because of known activities, so which we can use it. So this approach like enabling or disabling. Yeah, so that's about resolving that issue. So this, if you like to use it, all these commands, so first you need to do that, those configurations. Okay, now what we understood so far, if you just observe that, how do we install the Nagios with the task cell, and then the Nagios 3 package, then starting the services and verifying the services, and checking that log file. Log file is like where the main which is defined is the log file locations, PID file location, commands file locations, where the configuration files are located, and what is the user account, group account, and what is the external command, enabling, disabling, accepting, required or not. So those are all some configurations which are defined. So where that is located is nagios.cfg file. And then we are accessing about it, the Nagios through the browser, and yes, we are observing about it, how you can see the current status information of it. Like you can use a tactical view, that is overview of the systems, or you can go to the particular host or the particular services, or you can see this list of all the hosts belong to the particular groups, group wise, or the server groups, and especially the problems point of view, you can see that the services problems or the host problems or the network outages. Yeah, so this is the understanding for that timing. But the next point what we have is, now the host, whatever we are seeing this here, that host like already it is keep on verifying about it, this host ping is okay or not, and the packets loss, and the report time, so which is taking that. So all this information that is showing here, that means background, it is giving these statistics on the base of some intervals, which is keep on verifying is nothing but, normally if you'd like to verify the host, what do we do? This is, we run the ping command, ping under that host, the name or IP address which we use it. Instead of running that ping command by manually, then what the Nagios is helping is background, some scripts are running that with that interval to check it or to run this the ping command, and the ping command, whatever the result which is given, that on the base of the result which is showing this the status over here. So you are seeing this the status verifications, or you are seeing that the services statuses, all these things are nothing but background, some commands are running that. But what about all these commands, where these are all located? And if I would like to define this my own host, like to check it, or if I would like to define for my own services to define that the status verifications, where I can implement it, my host status verifications, are on that host the particular service status verifications, how do I implement it? Yeah, here also we have the code, so implementing about it. But you need to reissue the clients, or you need to reissue with the services. So that's registration is the process which we can say that like a plugins configuration and the plugins related commands. You need to identify that command, how do we need to use it, you need to identify. After understanding that that's the usage, then we need to define that the metrics which are required as per the about our infrastructure, like warning metrics or the critical metrics. So how do we define it and where do we define it? First of all, how I can get it about the, suppose disk space, I would like to define it. But what about the disk space? How it is verifying that? How, what is the command that is available? What is that command syntax? For warning, what is the percentage of the disk space I need to specify? I mean, that's a metric where I can specify it. So that's points to understand it. The next section what we have is, so we need to browse that, the plugin section. So where the plugins are located, if you just observe this, in the etc folder, yeah. So in the etc folder, if you just observe that Nagios 3, yeah. So Nagios plugins is one directory is available. So Nagios 3 is the configuration directory, and the Nagios, so just if you use it, Nagios plugins, and with the config directory. So we have the so many files or so many configuration files which are available. That means these are all the plugins which are downloaded, and it is managing all these plugins related configuration files over here. But what are these plugins if you just observe that? So here, so SSH configuration file, or users configuration file, or telnet configuration file, and how do we the system is checking that, the ping configuration file, how the process it is verifying, process configuration file, how it is verifying the HTTP services, HTTP configuration file, how it is verifying the disk utilization is disk configuration file. That means what are all the services which are observing that load or current users, the users configuration file, disk space, the disk space configuration file, HTTP, SSH process. So what are the services if you like to register here, the service related, the configuration files are located here. And even that the system verification, the ping is also available. Now, how do I know that the syntax of these, all these ping commands, or suppose users command or disk space commands, if you'd like to know about it, then so if you just refer these files, suppose the users dot configuration file. Now here it has been implemented one command. So what is the command which is defined is, command name is check users. That means in my own script, if I define this command check users, then the Nagios, what it is doing is indirectly it is going to try to run this file. So this is like the wrapper files. All these configuration files are wrapper files. What is the wrapper which is doing is, so this configuration files contains about the commands which are required to use it by the Nagios. So in this browser we are observing about it. So in Nagios documentation somewhere which were yeah, so here if you just observe that Nagios is going to use it, which command here, check nrp. So check nrp is that the command which is using by the Nagios, and this check nrp is going to communicate to this nrp service, and which is going to, like, what are the commands it is running this internally is check disk, check load. That means there are the commands, and these commands are defined with the binary files. Suppose, so here what we are saying is check users. Check users is the command. So nrp service is going to call this check users command, and whenever the check users command is triggered, so backend, what is the binary file it has to run it? Check users is nothing but we need to run that who is a who command, and that who command, how many the users it is written using wc-l, I need to return it. Suppose if I go for that who, so how many users are logged in? So the who with wc-l, if I give that, now it is written that one. That means one user has logged in. So Like whenever the Nagios is executing the check users command, background one binary file is executing. This is the binary script, but where these binary scripts are located is user lib Nagios plugins check users. So that's nothing but all these configuration files are the just wrapper classes. So which command, that command related, which binary file it has to execute it. So that contains that information contains in this file. And whenever the check users command is executing, so what is the binary file it is executing is this is the binary file, and to this check users binary it is passing that -w with a value and -c one value. What is this -w and -c? -w is warning message purpose, how many users that do you want to verify, and if you would like to get the critical metric, how many users that do you want to verify. That means to this check users, the warning, if I specify the 4 or 5 here, -w 5 space -c 10 here. That means if the who which is written as the 5 greater than, then it is going to give that the users are reached that the warning statuses. And if I define this the critical as 10 users, that means 10 users whenever we logged in, when the 10 users at the same time, so once the users are logged into the system, then it is going to track it that yes, it is going to show this as a critical message. So the background, the commands are mapped with the warning metrics and as well as critical metric. But where the wrapping is done is, so this is that the binary script, and it is receiving this or it is reading this that required arguments for that. And you don't need to call it each and every time to the binary file. So how you can trigger this binary file is just call this check users. But where we can call it, we'll come back. We need to define it. That is the next implementation we have. Suppose on that particular host, I need to check my users, how many users are logged in. So I need to define this is the command, but I don't need to define this complete location with -w all these points. So the check users, and we need to define. So this is with the arguments. Like how to define it, I'll come back. So we have some notations here itself, first argument, second argument. Here itself, we can pass it. Yeah, so there's if you just try to okay, let me show this one more also. Suppose if you go for to check it something disk space. Okay, let me show the disk space as well. But they have given us multiple options here, not only one command. And disk configuration, and what is the first command is check disk. So check disk and check all disks is another command. That means if I'm having the particular partition, how I can check it, that this option. And I would like to check it all the partitions on the system, this is the command I can use it. So here you can see that the warning metric, critical metric, and you can specify this the third one more argument -p. This is the partition, which partition does do you want to verify that. Suppose I have my root partition, so here slash, and if the root partition is having like something 70%, 70% is as a free percentage which we are expecting. That means the how much percentage of the free that we are expecting. So suppose 30%, that means 70 if it is utilized, I mean the free remaining. So here always we'll pass it about free, how much we are expecting that. If I define the 30% here, that means 70% is utilization. And the critical, if I define as at least 20% of the disk always required availability. That means if I define the 20, meaning is nothing but whenever the 80% is reached, it is going to mark it as a critical. So we'll come back. So we'll see this with some practicals which will come back. So check disk, the specific partition, check all disk. So all the partitions on the particular the disk SSH disk. So where you can check it, that's on the remote host address, and then check disk it is passing, and then the warning metric and critical metric and which partition. That means so on, I mean whatever the system which is launching, from that it is going to try to connect it to this remote host, and from that remote host it is going to try to execute the check disk. Yeah, so there are the like the different commands which are available, but how do I know that all these commands and this commands related? So here finally, if we just observe that, so what are the scripts, what are the binary file it is going to call? It is check disk binary file, check disk binary file, and check disk by SSH, and this is also check disk by SSH. But where all these binaries are located, let me show that. So if you go to this directory, so userlib Nagios plugins, and here you can see this all the binary files. So like I mean the checking about what are those commands we're observing? Check user, yeah, check users. This is the command. And check disk, which is having these two options. What are those two options? If you just observe that, check disk, and you can find it somewhere. The check disk with the SMB something sh. Yeah, so on the basis of the command you can find it check by SSH. So where is that? Yes, this is the check by SSH. Yeah, check by SSH, check by disk. That means in this configuration, in the plugin configuration file, so it is just this, like the configuration file is a wrapper, the command, and for this command, which script it is required to execute it at the background, and what are the arguments that is expecting for that script. So these CFG files, which are located in the etc Nagios plugins config folder, contains as a wrapper. But actual binaries, where do you have the sys? So these are all the binaries which are located in userlib Nagios plugins. Suppose if I just try to run this one, suppose check underscore disk. Yeah, so if I try to run it also, yes, it is expecting some arguments. Okay, let me give that -w. Okay, so instead of this okay, how do you run it? I will come back, but let me try to open this. If I try to open also with a cat or something, then you cannot see these binary files. So we cannot see these binary files. So there are like which they have done this at the system level files, but you can get the help of these binary files. So how I can get that help? Suppose if I run that, the check underscore user something, and -h, you can use it, and short help if you need it, the help you can pass it, so you can get that the information is, so check users warning threshold must be a positive integer. That means you need to define the positive integer in this arguments, and usage is check users and -w users and -c users. So this is the command representation that we have. If you would like to use it, or if you would like to verify on that host, check users. So whenever we are learning about it Unix, so how do we check the users, or how do we work with that, all these options, we were understanding that like as a command line based. Now those shell scripts are ready made available. I mean, the shell script is nothing but, so actually if you'd like to check it in all the systems, all the users information, like you need to implement that the who command and getting that this the command output and verifying this with the 4 numbers or the 5 numbers, and if the 5 is exceeded, then giving that warning message or sending email notification. That's completely which you need to implement it as a shell script. But here how it is helping as a ready made. So just identify about your requirement and get this, that's the syntax, and use it and pass the required arguments to that with the matrix options. So this is the like the actual command syntax. But if you just observe the some options also, what is this W, what is the C, if you'd like to know about it, here you can see this with the -h option. -h is more detailed information with arguments and everything. And usage, yes, this is the usage, and in this H for help, and you can see that the version of this binary file, and -w for warning. That means you need to specify the integer. So set warning status if more than integer users are logged in. So if that number of users are logged in more than this, then it is going to give that warning message. And -c, this is the critical purpose. Set a critical status if more than integer users are logged in. If I specify as a 10 users are the more than logged in, then it is going to give the critical message. Like that, if we just verify that the check disk. So like before, once about your service is identified on that host, which is service is required to keep on tracking that, that service help you need to review that. So the service related which command, that command arguments, how do we know that, or how do we see this is? So there's a help using about it from the plugins. So if I use it like a check disk with -h, now here you can see the some more options as well as but mandatory which are this is -w and -c. This is a basic usage, but we can define that so that the path point of view or the device point of view or the groups point of view or the timeout options point of view. So there are the different options which they have given us. So like where you can find it, w with integer you can define, or this a disk space or the free percentage and the percentage also we can define. So the percentages, so the clear you can clear it, and the exact match, and -p that is the path of the switch partition that you want to check it that, and megabytes in the sizes we can define it. And finally, so they have given us some examples also, the check disk with -w -c partition, and the second partition with this critical messages, warning messages, and like a third partition, like that multiple partitions also we can pass it in the single command. Yeah, so there are the different options which they have given. Suppose now what do we do this is, suppose df-h if I go for, so on this mount point, so what is the utilization that has been reached? The 16% already reached, but what we are expecting in the check disk is like a free percentage we need to define. How much free percentage that you are expecting, and if it is the less than that, it is going to trigger that, it is going to, yeah, so giving that the warning message. So this plugin checks the amount of used disk space on a mounted file system, and it generates an alert if the free space is less than one of the threshold values. So it is going to verify that the disk space, how much it is used, and whatever the metric you are defining, metric is that the less than. Suppose if I define that the 30% as warning is nothing but if the 71% utilization has reached, that means my 30% of the free expectation is not available, that is less than that, the only 29% is available, then it is going to change that as a warning message. So if you'd like to so just to trigger the some warning message, what do you do this is, so the 16% is already used on this partition, that is the root partition. So if you'd like to run this one as to get there some warning message, -w. So what we are expecting, at least the percentages, so the free percentages, if I define that 85%, 85% as a free I am expecting, but what the current free is available is only 84 is available, that is less than 2 thus about our 85%. Suppose here if I give that something 80%, okay, first we'll check it thus with this scenario, and -c which I am expecting is the free as that's about our requirement, something 70% which I'm expecting. Let's assume the 70 is nothing but 30%. If it is reached this utilization, then it is going to give the critical message as per this system point of view. But in the organization, no, we don't define that these much percentages. So you'll be having the 30 or 20 or 25. So there's the metrics which are required for this the client requirement. But here usually is only the 16% here. That's why we have the free percentage we are defining more, like to get the some replication. And we'll verify this the partition is root. If I run this now, what is the disk which is showing this is disk is okay, because what is the free percentage we have defined 80, but how much it is available as like 84 is available as a free percentage. That's why the system is okay. Suppose if I define that I'm expecting at least 85%, that means used it should be 15 or less than that, but used how much it we have, this is 16% we have. And if I run now this, Now we got that warning message. Yeah, the free space, like the 85% is available. I mean, that is free is available, but we are expecting is 80%. So there's, I mean, 84% that is the free, as here, as this scenario point of view. Yeah, so that's why it is giving that the warning message. As we are expecting is 85% as a free, but free is available only the 84%. Yeah, like that you can give that the critical messages also. So on the base of that, if you like to see the critical here in this case, so how do we give that? Suppose if I give this here as 85%, and here if I give that the 90%, now the system has become as critical, because if it is the 10% as utilization one, that means I'm expecting the 90% of the free. If it is used 10 or less than that, okay, warning. But it is across that limitation also, it has been reached now about our free. I'm expecting critical as at least 85%. At least 85%. If it's the less than that, okay, give the critical warning. But in the reverse way, we'll define it in the organization. But here, this is the less usage which we have. That's why, like as per this scenario to replicate it, we're just doing that. These free percentages, but a free percentage we don't define this much. Yeah. So this, I mean, so any like the service, if you like to define it, the first you need to identify the plugin. That means the .cfg file and what all the commands are available. Those commands we need to note it. And those commands you need to go back to the about our binary file. Each and every command related help you need to find it to check it, this list of all the possible arguments for that. And then we need to define this the command, and we need to check it this the first manually on this one of the like POC system taking about it and verifying about it. And then that metric we will define in our host or service definition files. But how do we define that the host or service definition files? That's we'll come back to that on Monday. Yeah, so there's a point like how the plugins or the Nagios is helping about it, like to identify about your services. I mean, service identification is like that is a project requirement about your client or the managers. They come up with that, boss. So we are getting that we are not able to track that some the process information. I need to define the process information also in that the monitoring tool. If that process are exceeded this much limitation, we need to have some warning message. So that's the requirement, kind of the requirement. Then okay, you need to get it process information. Process to get it, what is the plugin? And in that plugin configuration file, what are the commands? And which command is suitable as per about our requirement? And then that command related help getting about it. Or if you just go directly about the Nagios documentation, there itself you can get it about it. Even you don't need to browse it this much help, but some variables point of view, you can refer that the help of these plugins also. Yeah, so there is a understanding which we have this. So how do we like identify it and how do we get it this information? And yeah, this with this information, and in the next class, so we are going to define that the client machine will take it Ansible node which we have. That's node we will register with about our Nagios master. And the first, how do we register the host? And after registering the host, on that host, what are the services are available? All those services, how do we register with the host? So that is the next section which we have, like reaching about the clients. And then we'll see the some shutdown times, how to define and how do we add the comments. We have some activities. So to understand it within the Nagios, we'll review about those concepts and we'll wind up about this Nagios. Yeah, so that's the concepts which are for today. So any queries or questions for today?